Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Drew, and I'm here to do my breakdown for My Hero Academia Season 6, Episode 19. And in this episode, I'm going to be breaking down the good, the bad, and by bad, I mean non-existent, because all that is in this episode is nothing but banger after banger. So, let's dive into the episode and see what this actually entails for the story moving forward. And for starters, the title of this episode is Full Power, which comes from the manga chapter title of chapter 308, as well as the fact that this episode covers chapters from 307 to 309. And the episode actually begins with a new scene of UA from afar, as we go into more of some reused scenes of DEKU talking and speaking on the letter that he left to everyone else. And the only thing that is new when it comes to what is happening in this episode is the narration performed by Uraraka, who pretty much explains and summarizes that Hero Society has fallen to complete ruin. And as we skip over the intro, we actually get reintroduced to some very familiar characters that we haven't seen since the Provisional Hero License Exam arc, which are Yoshindo and Tatami Nakagame. And these two heroes are here to basically convince some civilians who are still out in the world to come back and to take shelter within one of the hero schools. And some new information that you should be known about when it comes to these characters is the fact that they are third years, and this is very important when it comes to what students are able to do what, but also something else that is not necessarily in the manga or the anime proper is the fact that these characters are actually dating, and that this type of interaction and relationship can be seen with how they interact with each other and how they are able to reference each other in the anime itself using more cutie nicknames that they would actually use if they were in a relationship. So that is some information that I wanted to let you know that is not very apparent in the anime itself. And speaking more of the anime, these heroes are here to convince the civilians who are held up in this one office building to return to the safety of the hero schools. And this is where we are introduced to both a change and an addition from what we get in the manga in the anime. And this change comes from a single dialogue that Shindo is making to try and convince the people to return back to their school. Because in the manga, he more or less talks about how when it comes to these single individuals that they are out there and that they are just as much willing to cause harm to people and destroy everything. But in the anime, it is changed to actually a group of people, and we hear that it is later explained for them to be quote unquote not human. And this is a very important line to really get into your mind, because there is potentially going to be something later on in the future where we may be talking and discussing about racism and discrimination in the world of My Hero Academia, and the fact that they use these characters as being violent as well as quote unquote non-human actually ties into something that we're actually going to be getting within the final arc, so keep that in mind. But diving more into the additions made to the anime, we do get a few additional scenes that focus on some very background civilian characters that are not necessarily in the manga. As well as we get expanded dialogue that is not in the manga pertaining to why these specific civilians are still here in this city and what caused them to actually stay here. And the explanation is that the heroes that were in their area left, and that they lost trust in the heroes, and that even though they supported them over the years, that they just turned tailed and hid away and ran away, leaving these civilians to fend for themselves, which is why they no longer trust heroes and why Yoshindo actually fails to bring them back. So this added dialogue really adds to the idea that Hero Society has fallen, the civilians have lost hope in the heroes, and really shows that they do have justifiable reasons to not trust the heroes and not go along with them to a more quote-unquote safe place. But, you know, spoilers, they're going to have to leave this place ASAP. Because as the heroes are lamenting at the fact that they were unable to get these civilians to go back with them, they are alerted to the fact that a major jailbreaker has entered their area and is about to attack them. And that this jailbreaker is revealed to be the villain MUSCULAR that we saw during the summer camp arc, who is here to wreak havoc and go one-on-one against Shindo right before the title drops. And let's just say that there are some fun interactions between the characters in this small scene. We have Tatami trying to help the civilians but gets knocked down and pushed away. And we also have a small skirmish between Muscular and Shindo that leads to Shindo being pinned down by Muscular. And that's something interesting about this scene in the anime is how much they really want to focus on Muscular's muscles and how they are in motion in this moment. The animation in this scene is done well. I don't know why they did it, but it's fun that they did it anyway because it really adds to the fight that they are having in this moment. But I do believe we also get a reference to a move that Shindo used during the Provisional Hero License exam, which is under the name of Tremoring Earth. But unfortunately, as far as we see, it does not do that much damage to Muscular in this moment. And we do get to see Muscular is more or less about to kill Shindo by the fact that the blood is just rushing to his face as it turns red. Shindo is about to die, but is saved by amazing animation so great we had to see it 3 different times. And it is revealed that Shindo got saved by DEKU and also that Muscular remembers Midoriya from their fight during the summer camp arc. And this section of the episode really just shows how much care is put into the animation for this episode between the fight between DEKU and Muscular. This isn't going to be the only time I say how great this animation is, but this animation just gets better from here. Because we also get some flourishes when it comes to the animation of them changing Muscular's body, as well as having multiple scenes of it being this shade of blue, really making Muscular look very much menacing and ominous in this episode, and it just looks amazing when done this way. And there's also another color shift that we're going to see later on. But unfortunately, the fight does not start in earnest, as we do see DEKU return to Tatami as he is helping and telling her to take care of Shindo, where we do get a little bit more interactions between them, showing that they do care for each other. And as DEKU leaves, this is where we get to learn a little bit more about the quirks that he was able to unlock, starting with the more proper reveal of the 6th user's quirk, Smokescreen, which, as you can see, creates a smoke screen. However, it is tinted in a purple color. And this is very important because in the manga, it does not have any color whatsoever, and you can assume that it is white, but having it be a completely different color really adds to the quirk itself, because it's able to distinguish smoke screen created from DEKU versus smoke screen created by the fact that they are in a battle or a fight. And the fact that it's purple, I just kind of like it. But speaking of the quirks, we do get to see that DEKU is able to interact with the vestiges of One for All as he's fighting, as they are able to give him advice about using their quirks. However, we do not know for certain if they are physically there in the world or if they're just within inside DEKU's head. And I will bring up that there is a cut panel from the manga, not in the anime, but the anime could bring it back in a later episode. But talking a little bit more of his quirks, the next part of the action is where we see DEKU use the quirks that he's able to use in succession in very unique and interesting way. We see that he creates Smokescreen to lure Muscular out of the smoke. He uses Float to get above the smoke so that he can have a better sense of where everyone and everything is. He uses Danger Sense to intercept as well as dodge Muscular's attack, and he uses Black Whip to bind Muscular in an area where he can do the least amount of damage. So it's cool that we're able to see DEKU use all of these quirks in succession in a very unique and interesting way, as well as it adds to the idea that DEKU's greatest strength is his mind and not necessarily training the quirks themselves. And once again, the action in the scene, especially revolving around Muscular, is done fantastically in this episode. And when it comes to this episode, this is where we get to see DEKU begin to try and understand the villains and understand where they came from and why they are here. Where it is revealed that Muscular's real name is actually Goto Inasuji. And we pretty much just have Muscular confirming the fact that he is just someone who loves destruction and loves killing, and that DEKU may just be resolved to have to fight him in this moment. And we really see how monstrous and evil Muscular is by we see the fact that his entire screen turns red when he declares that he likes murder. And this idea is sold the best by having Muscular bathed in this red glow that completely turns the screen red, which could be an indication of Muscular's bloodlust and want to kill. And I love that the anime was able to do this, because by doing so makes Muscular even more intimidating and evil and a threat. And as we are getting towards the end of the fight, Deku gets an expanded little scene where he remembers Kota, which leads into him remembering what was going on inside of Shigaraki and giving him the resolve to defeat Muscular with a single punch, while also realizing Muscular's weakness and realizing that most likely than not, Shindo helped play a major role in the Muscular defeat, and how this entire sequence is animated so fantastically well. From the Deku pose, to the moments right before the punch makes contact, to the aftermath where we see Deku spread the water while Muscular goes unconscious. So all in all, this is probably the highlight of this entire episode when it comes to animation alone. And going from that animation, we are once again reintroduced to some familiar faces that we also saw during the Provisional Hero License Exam arc, where we see Itejiro, Totaki, as well as Shikui Makabe. And they're pretty much here to identify Deku leaving the scene, as well as transition into Shindo remembering Deku from the Provisional Hero License Exam, where he's able to realize that Deku is slightly different now than when he was then. And from there, we do get the confirmation that Deku was able to turn Muscular over to the police, as well as the fact that he's actually working alongside All Might, as well as some other pro heroes such as Endeavor and Hawks. And from here, Deku was actually being introduced with some new gear that he got from the US thanks to the help of All Might. And this gear is very similar to the gear that we saw in one of the My Hero Academia movies, where the gauntlet was actually created by Melissa Shield, which is more or less confirmation that Melissa Shield is actually present in the world of My Hero Academia in the manga as well as in the anime. So I really do enjoy this reference, and as we see that Deku leaves, we do get an added flight scene of him flying through the air, which is going to punctuate the beginning and the end of the next part of the episode and the final part of the episode, which is a flashback after the moments that Deku woke up from talking to the Vestiges a few days prior. Also, something else that I want to bring up is the similarities between this scene and a similar scene from the My Hero Academia second opening. And the scenes are similar by having both Deku and All Might fly across the screen as they are passing a building as their reflections are being reflected in the windows. So most likely, the scene in this episode is pretty much an homage to the scene that we got in the second opening of My Hero Academia. And when it comes to what we get in this small flashback, we do get a fair amount. We get confirmation of what was happening with Deku's arms, which is that the damage that he took during the war is completely different than his original damage. And second is more or less that his body is built differently, and how in the anime is depicted in a very unique way of showing it with two circles, one of Deku at 5% in a smaller circle, and one at Deku at 45%. And this has led to some controversy when it comes to Deku and the idea that he faces no consequences after the war. However, we need to take into account that Deku was always going to be able to, most likely than not, access the power of One For All at 100% without breaking his arms, and that he has been able to access this power prior without doing massive damage to his arm, and that the arms thing was less of a he's going to lose his arms and more of a wake-up call for him to stop mimicking All Might and do his own thing and mitigate the damage on his body, which he has done, and that it shows that all of his trials and tribulations have begun to bore fruit. And let's get a little bit more into the sadder part of this episode, which is the idea that Inko learns about what is happening with her son and the secret of One For All via a very interesting transition of panning over the glass from the outside, as we don't actually hear All Might reveal the information to her, but we know that it's heavily implied that she knows now. And how this entire scene is really done amazingly in the anime, really adding to the emotions that we got in the manga when it comes to Inko and her concern for Deku, as well as seeing Deku's maturity, being able to comfort his mom during these trialing times, really showing that he has grown as a person. As well as the fact that we get confirmation that Deku is planning on leaving UA, but that All Might volunteered that he would help Deku alongside other pro heroes. And this entire part of the section ends with Deku obtaining the yellow cape from Gran Torino, which is something that was made and foreshadowed in the ending of the first ending of season 6, and how Gran Torino gives Deku the idea that killing may be a form of salvation, which may come into the forefront at the end of this series, potentially. And that's pretty much it for the episode. We do get an entirely new scene that is most likely a substitute for a panel that we saw in the manga, which confirms that the top 3 pro heroes of Endeavor, Hawks, and Best Jeanist, who are working alongside both Deku and All Might to find All For One and Shigaraki, as we return to the present of Deku jumping away from the scene that he was in at the beginning of this flashback as the episode ends. And yes, that's pretty much my breakdown for My Hero Academia Season 6, Episode 19. So, let me ask you, what did you think of the episode? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? And what was your favorite part? And did you enjoy the action and animation when it comes to Muscular? Leave your thoughts down in the comments down below. Leave a like on the video if you liked it. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content like this. And don't forget to hit that bell to be notified for whenever I upload more content like this. Do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!